The autumn rain hammered against the old pickup truck as Emma Winters drove down the forgotten back road to Evergreen Valley Farm, her 8-month pregnant belly pressed uncomfortably against the steering wheel, the twins inside restless, as if sensing her desperation. She had nothing left but a suitcase of clothes, $200, and a mysterious letter about a pig that kept digging by the north barn. A letter that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The windshield wipers struggled against the downpour as Emma squinted through the glass, searching for any sign of the turnoff mentioned in her grandmother's letter. The twins kicked vigorously, making her wince and adjust her position. 29 years old, abandoned by her husband, and following the cryptic final words of her only living relative who had passed 3 weeks ago. "Just a little longer," she whispered, both to herself and the babies. The headlights caught a weathered wooden sign half hidden by overgrowth. Evergreen Valley Farm. Emma turned onto the muddy drive, her heart pounding as the truck wheels slipped in the muck. As the vehicle crested a small hill, she saw it. A sprawling farmhouse, its white paint peeling, windows glowing amber against the gray curtain of rain. And beyond it, barely visible, the silhouette of a large barn. The truck sputtered ominously as Emma pulled up to the house. She turned the key, and the engine died with a finality that made her stomach clench. With the rain still pounding, she grabbed her grandmother's letter from the passenger seat, reading the weathered paper one more time. "When you have nowhere else to go, Evergreen Valley will welcome you home. Look for Jasper's pig by the north barn. Let it dig. The truth is buried there." Emma had never heard of Evergreen Valley before the letter arrived. Her grandmother Eliza had never mentioned owning property outside of the small apartment where she'd lived for 30 years. And who was Jasper? The questions had multiplied in Emma's mind during the long drive from Chicago, but with her eviction notice in hand and the twins due in less than a month, she had no choice but to follow this mysterious thread. A flash of lightning illuminated the yard, and Emma caught a glimpse of movement near the barn. A dark shape, low to the ground, rooting in the mud. Her breath caught. The pig from the letter. It existed. As the thunder rolled overhead, Emma gathered her courage and opened the truck door. The moment her feet touched the ground, a wave of dizziness crashed over her. The long drive, the stress, the pregnancy. It all converged at once. She gripped the truck door, fighting to stay upright as the world tilted sideways. Through the rain, she saw a tall figure emerge from the barn, moving quickly toward her. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, Emma registered broad shoulders, a cowboy hat, and piercing eyes that widened in alarm as they met hers. "Hold on," a deep voice called through the storm. But it was too late. Emma felt her knees buckle as the ground rushed up to meet her. The last thing she remembered was strong arms catching her before she hit the mud, and the strange pig watching from a distance, its intelligent eyes seeming to hold secrets as old as the farm itself. When Emma opened her eyes, she was lying on a worn leather couch, a patchwork quilt tucked around her. The steady drumming of rain against the windows had softened to a gentle patter. A fire crackled in a stone hearth nearby, casting dancing shadows across unfamiliar walls lined with bookshelves and faded photographs. "Back with us, I see." Emma turned toward the voice, her hand instinctively going to her belly. A man sat in a chair nearby, his features thrown into sharp relief by the firelight. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, a startling shade of green, watched her with equal parts concern and wariness. "The baby's okay?" he asked, nodding toward her stomach. Emma felt the reassuring movement beneath her palm. "Yes," she said, her voice hoarse. "They're moving." The man nodded once, seemingly satisfied. "Name's Garrett Reed. This is my farm." Emma struggled to sit up, confusion clouding her thoughts. "Your farm? But my grandmother's letter said—" "Eliza Winters," Garrett interrupted, reaching for something on the side table. He held up her grandmother's letter. "This was your grandmother?" "Yes," Emma said. uneasiness crawling up her spine. "You knew her?" Garrett's expression remained carefully neutral. "I bought this place from her 6 years ago. She never mentioned family." The twins kicked hard, as if protesting this revelation. Emma winced, her hand pressing against the spot. Garrett's eyes tracked the movement, something unreadable flickering across his face. "That can't be right," Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "She sent me this letter 3 weeks ago, just before she died. She told me to come here, that I'd be welcome." Garrett stood, moving to the window. He pushed aside a faded curtain, gazing out at the rain-soaked farm. In the distance, the barn loomed dark against the stormy sky. "Eliza came back once a year," he said finally. "Always in October. Always alone. She'd spend a day walking the property, then leave. Last year, she spent most of her time by the north barn, watching that damned pig of hers dig holes all over creation." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Her pig?" Emma asked, hope sparking. "So she did have a connection here." Garrett turned back to her, his expression softening slightly. "Jasper isn't exactly her pig. He showed up the day I bought the place. Wild thing, but oddly attached to the property. Eliza claimed he belonged to the farm, not to any person. Said some animals just know things people don't." Emma's mind raced, trying to piece together this puzzle. Her grandmother, secretive until the end, sending her to a farm she no longer owned, to find a truth buried by a pig that didn't belong to her. None of it made sense. "I need to see the barn," Emma said, pushing the quilt aside. "The north barn, where the pig digs." "Not tonight you don't," Garrett said firmly. "Storm's set to get worse, and you nearly passed out once already. Whatever Eliza sent you to find has been in the ground a long time. Another night won't matter." As if to emphasize his point, lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the room in stark white light. In that instant, Emma noticed what she'd missed before. The photographs on the walls weren't of Garrett or any family she recognized. They were old, sepia-toned images of Evergreen Valley Farm in its earlier days. And in several of them, standing proudly in front of the barn, was a young woman who looked remarkably like Emma herself. The next flash revealed Garrett watching her, those green eyes missing nothing. "You see it too," he said quietly. "The resemblance." Emma nodded, her throat tight. "Who is she?" "Grace Evergreen, original owner of this farm, back in the 1920s. Your grandmother never explained the connection, just made me promise to keep the photos up. Part of the sale agreement." A sudden, powerful kick from one of the twins made Emma gasp. Garrett was beside her instantly, one hand hovering uncertainly near her shoulder. "Hospital's 40 minutes away in good weather," he said, concern evident in his voice. "In this storm, longer." Emma shook her head, breathing through the discomfort. "It's not labor. They're just active, strong." She looked up, meeting his gaze, like they know something I don't. Garrett's lips quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Farm air'll do that. Makes everything grow stronger." He moved away, heading toward what Emma assumed was the kitchen. "You need to eat something. Then rest." "I can't stay," Emma called after him, though the words lacked conviction. "I don't even know you." Garrett reappeared in the doorway, one eyebrow raised. "You planning to sleep in that broken-down truck? Or maybe trudge through the mud to the motel 20 miles back?" He shook his head. "Storms washed out the lower road anyway. Nobody's going anywhere tonight." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. Emma sank back against the couch cushions, suddenly aware of how exhausted she truly was. The twins had settled somewhat, their movements more gentle now, as if they too were acknowledging the need for rest. "One night," she conceded. "And tomorrow, I need to see where that pig is digging." Garrett studied her for a long moment. "Your grandmother was just as stubborn," he said finally. "Never did explain why she kept coming back here, year after year. Just said some ties can't be broken, no matter how hard people try to cut them." He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and the crackling fire. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the old farmhouse, wind howling around the eaves like a living thing. Emma found herself studying the photographs on the walls, searching the face of Grace Evergreen for answers. What was the connection between this woman and her grandmother? And what truth could possibly be buried in the ground by the north barn? A truth important enough for Eliza's final message to her only granddaughter. The twins moved again, a gentle rolling beneath her skin. "We'll find out," she promised them softly. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Morning arrived with surprising gentleness, the storm having blown itself out sometime in the night. Emma woke on the couch to sunlight streaming through windows that had been battered by rain just hours before. The house was quiet, but a mug of tea sat steaming on the coffee table beside her, along with a plate of toast and a note in a strong, slanted hand. "Gone to check fence lines. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Don't go to the barn alone." Emma smiled, despite herself at the directness of the message. Garrett Reed was not a man who wasted words. She ate quickly, her gaze continually drawn to the window and the view of the property in daylight. Evergreen Valley Farm was larger than she'd imagined, with rolling pastures stretching toward distant tree lines. The farmhouse sat on a gentle rise, with outbuildings scattered below. And there, to the north, stood the barn from her grandmother's letter, its weathered red paint a stark contrast to the green fields surrounding it. After a quick exploration of the house revealed a bathroom with a shower, Emma took advantage of the opportunity to clean up. Her suitcase was still in the truck, but Garrett had apparently retrieved it during the night. The simple kindness brought unexpected tears to her eyes. In the months since Thomas had walked out, claiming he couldn't handle fatherhood, let alone twins, Emma had grown accustomed to carrying her own burdens. Dressed in clean clothes, feeling more human than she had in days, Emma made her way outside. The October air was crisp and clean after the storm, carrying the scent of wet earth and growing things. Her boots sank slightly in the muddy yard as she walked toward her truck, intending to see if by some miracle it might start. A sound caught her attention, a rhythmic grunting and the distinct noise of something digging. Emma turned toward the sound, her heart quickening. There, by the corner of the north barn, was a large spotted pig, its snout deep in the mud as it excavated with surprising precision. Jasper, the pig from her grandmother's letter. Emma approached slowly, mindful of her footing in the slippery yard. The pig continued its work, seemingly unconcerned by her presence. As she drew closer, Emma could see that this was no ordinary farm pig. Jasper was massive, with a distinctive pattern of black spots against rusty brown fur. His tusks, though small, were visible when he lifted his head to regard her with intelligent eyes. "What are you looking for?" Emma asked softly, feeling only slightly foolish for talking to a pig. Jasper snorted once, then returned to his digging with renewed vigor. The hole he'd created was already significant, at least 2 feet across and nearly as deep. "I wouldn't get too close." Emma turned to find Garrett approaching from the direction of the fields. His clothes were mud-splattered, his hat pulled low against the morning sun. "He doesn't like strangers," Garrett continued, coming to stand beside her. "Except, apparently, you." Emma watched as Jasper continued to dig, completely unbothered by their presence. "My grandmother's letter said to let him dig. That the truth is buried here." Garrett's expression remained neutral, but Emma caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. Or concern. "Eliza said a lot of things about this farm that didn't make sense," he said. "Called it bloodland once. Said the Evergreens never really left, even when the deeds changed hands." A chill ran through Emma despite the warmth of the morning sun. "What did she mean?" Garrett shrugged, but the gesture seemed forced. "Never explained. Just made me promise that if a pig ever started digging persistently in one spot, especially by the north barn, I wouldn't stop it." "And you agreed to that?" Emma asked, surprised. "Farm came cheap," Garrett said, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "I was 28. Just inherited enough from my grandfather to make a down payment. Eliza's conditions seemed harmless enough. Keep the photos up. Let the pig dig if it wanted to, and allow her to visit once a year." Emma turned back to Jasper, who had paused in his work and was now watching them, his small eyes surprisingly perceptive. "And when did he start digging here specifically?" 3 weeks ago, Garrett said quietly, day after I got word that Eliza had passed. The timing sent another chill through Emma. 3 weeks ago, her grandmother had died, and a pig had started digging in the exact spot mentioned in a letter Emma had received after the funeral. It couldn't be coincidence. I need to know what's buried there, she said. Garrett studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Figured as much. That's why I brought these. He reached into a pocket and pulled out 2 pairs of work gloves. Jasper does the initial work, but whatever's down there, we'll need to finish the job. Emma took the offered gloves, surprised by Garrett's ready acceptance of the strange situation. You're not curious about what it might be? Been curious for 3 weeks, Garrett admitted. But Eliza was clear. The pig digs for a reason, and whatever's buried is meant for family. I figured someone would show up eventually. His gaze dropped to her pregnant belly, though I wasn't expecting twins in the equation. As if on cue, one of the babies kicked hard enough to make Emma wince. Garrett's eyes widened slightly at the visible movement. Active little things, he observed. They've been extra restless since we arrived, Emma said, rubbing the spot. Like they know something important is happening. Garrett's expression softened momentarily. Farm instinct. They can feel the connection to the land. He nodded toward Jasper, who had resumed digging with renewed determination. Just like he can. The pig's efforts had now created a hole nearly 3 feet across. As they watched, his snout struck something solid, producing a dull thud that was distinctly different from the sound of dirt being displaced. He's found something, Emma whispered, moving forward despite her awkward balance. Garrett was beside her instantly, one hand steady at her elbow. Careful. Ground still soft from the storm. Together, they approached the hole. Jasper had stepped back, watching with what Emma could only describe as satisfaction as they knelt beside his excavation. The morning sun illuminated the pit, revealing the corner of something solid and rectangular protruding from the dark soil. A box, Garrett murmured, reaching into the hole. His fingers brushed away mud to reveal what appeared to be metal, discolored by years underground but still intact. Feels like an old lockbox or strongbox. Emma's heart pounded as she knelt beside him, the twins shifting inside her as if they too were trying to get closer to this discovery. Can we get it out? Garrett nodded, already working to loosen the earth around the box. Jasper did most of the hard work. Just need to clear enough space to lift it out without damaging anything. Together, they worked in silent partnership, Emma clearing away loosened soil while Garrett dug deeper around the box's edges. Despite her condition, Emma found herself moving with a sense of purpose and energy she hadn't felt in months. Whatever was in that box, it was meant for her. Her grandmother had made sure of that. Almost there, Garrett said after several minutes of careful excavation. It's bigger than I thought. Old-fashioned strongbox, the kind people used to keep important documents in before bank vaults became common. With a final effort, he worked his fingers beneath the box and lifted. It came free with a sound of suction, decades of compacted earth, reluctantly releasing its secret. Garrett set it carefully on the ground between them, both of them now muddy to the elbows. The box was approximately 18 inches long by 12 inches wide, made of metal that might once have been painted green, but was now mostly rust-colored from its time underground. A tarnished brass lock secured the front, the keyhole packed with dirt. No key, I assume? Garrett asked, looking at Emma. She shook her head. Just the letter. Jasper approached, his job apparently complete, and nudged the box with his snout before looking up at Emma with an expectant expression. I think he wants you to open it, Garrett said, the corner of his mouth lifting in what might have been amusement. Emma reached out, touching the box with trembling fingers. After coming all this way, following a cryptic message from beyond the grave, she suddenly found herself afraid of what might be inside. What truth had her grandmother thought important enough to direct her to, yet had never spoken of while alive? Whatever it is, Garrett said quietly, seeming to sense her hesitation. Eliza wanted you to find it. Must have been important. Emma nodded, drawing strength from his steady presence. The lock's old. Probably rusted through after all this time. Only one way to find out. Garrett stood, offering her a hand. Let's take it to the workshop. I've got tools there that might help, and you shouldn't be kneeling in the mud in your condition. Emma accepted his assistance, surprised at how naturally her hand fit in his larger one. As he helped her to her feet, the twins kicked vigorously, making her gasp softly. Garrett's eyes dropped to her belly, a mixture of concern and something harder to define crossing his features. Still kicking for farm air? Emma smiled despite the emotional weight of the moment. They know we found something important. They're eager to see what's inside, just like we are. Garrett nodded, his expression softening again. Then let's not keep them waiting. He picked up the box carefully, its weight substantial enough to require both hands. Workshop's this way. As they crossed the yard toward a smaller outbuilding, Emma became acutely aware of the strangeness of her situation. 24 hours ago, she had been driving through a storm, following a cryptic message from her deceased grandmother to a farm she'd never heard of. Now she was walking through morning sunlight beside a man she barely knew, about to uncover a secret that had been buried for who knew how long. And yet, despite everything, she felt an inexplicable sense of rightness, as if, after months of drifting, she had finally found solid ground beneath her feet. The workshop was a tidy space that smelled of wood shavings and machine oil. Garrett cleared a space on a sturdy workbench and set the box down carefully. Natural light streamed through windows that looked out over the eastern fields, illuminating the mysterious container that had brought Emma to Evergreen Valley Farm. Let's see what we're dealing with, Garrett said, reaching for a toolbox. He selected a small brush and began gently cleaning decades of dirt from the lock mechanism. Emma watched him work, struck by the care in his movements. His hands, strong enough to work fence lines and manage a farm alone, were capable of surprising gentleness. "You're good at this," she observed. Garrett glanced up briefly, a shadow of a smile crossing his features. "Restore old farm equipment sometimes. Hobby of mine." He returned his attention to the lock. "This box has been down there a long time. Probably since Grace Evergreen's day, judging by the style." "The woman in the photographs," Emma murmured. "The one who looks like me." Garrett nodded, continuing his careful work. Eliza never explained the connection, but the resemblance is strong. Too strong for coincidence. The twins shifted inside Emma, one foot or elbow pressing outward as if reaching for the box. She placed her hand over the spot, feeling the movement beneath her palm. "Family secrets," she said softly. "My grandmother was a master at keeping them. Never talked about her past, her family. I didn't even know my grandfather's name." "Some people carry heavy burdens," Garrett said, his voice equally soft. "Sometimes it's easier not to share the weight." There was something in his tone that made Emma look at him more closely. "You sound like you speak from experience." Garrett's gaze remained on the lock, but Emma saw something in the set of his shoulders that spoke of personal understanding. "Lost my wife 5 years ago," he said, the words measured as if each one carried weight. "Car accident. After that, talking about her, about us, it just hurt too much. Easier to work the land, let the seasons pass." The simple admission hung in the air between them, creating a bridge of shared experience. Emma thought of her own silence surrounding Thomas's abandonment, how she'd retreated from friends rather than explain. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Garrett nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy without looking up. "Lock's badly corroded, but I think I can get it." He selected a small chisel from his tools. "Might have to break it. Hope that's okay." "Whatever it takes," Emma said, her attention drawn back to the mysterious box. "I don't think my grandmother expected it to come out of the ground intact after all this time." With careful precision, Garrett positioned the chisel against a weak point in the lock's mechanism. A few taps with a small hammer, and the corroded metal gave way. The lock broke apart, pieces falling to the workbench. "There," he said, setting his tools aside. Moment of truth. Emma moved closer, the twins shifting inside her as if sensing the importance of the moment. Together, she and Garrett faced the box, neither immediately reaching to open it. "Whatever's in there," Garrett said quietly, "it changes things. You understand that, right? Secrets don't stay buried without reason. Emma met his gaze, finding concern there but also something steadier. Support. I need to know, she said simply. For them. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the twins' movements beneath her palm. And for me. Garrett nodded, stepping back slightly. Your grandmother wanted you to find this. It's yours to open. Taking a deep breath, Emma reached for the box. The lid was heavy, resistant after decades underground, but it lifted with a protesting groan of hinges that had long since forgotten their purpose. Inside, protected from the elements by the box's solid construction, lay several items carefully wrapped in oilcloth that had preserved them from the ravages of time. Emma's hands trembled as she lifted out the first bundle. Unwrapping it carefully, she revealed a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but intact. The name embossed on the cover made her breath catch. Grace Evergreen, she whispered. The woman from the photographs, Garrett confirmed, his voice equally hushed. Beneath the journal lay another cloth-wrapped item that revealed itself to be a small wooden box. Inside nestled a gold locket on a delicate chain, tarnished but still beautiful. With careful fingers, Emma opened the locket to find a tiny photograph on one side. A young woman in 1920s dress, Grace, holding a baby, her expression a mixture of pride and sorrow. The third item was a thick envelope, sealed with wax that had cracked with age. Written across the front, in faded ink, were words that made Emma's heart stutter. For my granddaughter, when she finds her way home. It's addressed to me, Emma said, wonder in her voice. But this has been buried for decades. How could she know? Garrett's expression was thoughtful. Some people see further than others. My grandmother used to say certain women in her family had the knowing, a sense for things that would come to pass. Emma carefully broke the wax seal and opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document, brittle with age but still legible. As she scanned the formal language, her eyes widened. It's a deed, she said, disbelief coloring her voice. To Evergreen Valley Farm. Dated 1926, from Grace Evergreen to... She paused, the name unfamiliar, yet striking a chord of recognition deep within her. To Eleanor Grace Winters, her infant daughter. My grandmother. Garrett took a step back, processing this revelation. Your grandmother owned this place? All along? It appears so, Emma said, continuing to read. But there's more. A clause stating that if Eleanor or her descendants ever returned to claim the farm, any intervening sales or transfers would be considered temporary stewardship only. She looked up at Garrett, understanding dawning. She never sold you the farm. She leased it to you, knowing someday her family would return. The implications hung in the air between them. Emma, 8 months pregnant with twins, had arrived at a farm that legally belonged to her, directed there by a grandmother who had orchestrated this moment perhaps decades in advance. Why? Emma whispered, more to herself than to Garrett. Why send me here now? Why keep this secret all these years? Garrett's expression had grown guarded, and Emma suddenly realized what this meant for him. You've built a life here, she said quickly. Invested years, made it your home. I don't want to. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he interrupted, his voice carefully neutral. There's more in that box. Might be answers there. Emma nodded, turning her attention back to the journal. She opened it carefully, the leather binding creaking softly. The handwriting inside was elegant, flowing across pages that documented the daily life of a woman in the 1920s. Emma flipped through, glimpsing entries about crops and weather, local events, and personal reflections. Then a date caught her eye, October 17, 1925. Almost exactly 100 years ago. The entry was longer than the others, the handwriting more urgent. They came again today, Emma read aloud, demanding I sell the farm, offering more money than I could earn in 10 years. But Evergreen Valley is more than land and buildings. It is the legacy I must preserve for my daughter. Eleanor must never know the truth of her father until she is of age, but this land is her birthright, and I will protect it with my last breath. Emma looked up, meeting Garrett's intent gaze. Someone was trying to force her off the land. Keep reading, he encouraged softly. Emma turned the page, finding the next entry dated a week later. "The pig appeared today," she continued reading. "A strange creature, too intelligent for a common farm animal. It began digging by the north barn, in the exact spot where I buried the box. As if it knew. When I approached, it looked at me with eyes too knowing for a beast. Protection comes in many forms. I believe this animal is a guardian of sorts. I have named him Jasper, after my father." "The same spot," Garrett murmured. After all this time, Emma nodded, her mind racing to connect these pieces. "The pig in your barn?" "Can't be the same animal," Garrett said reasonably. "Pigs don't live 100 years. "No," Emma agreed. "But what if it's a descendant? Or something else entirely?" The twins kicked vigorously, as if confirming her thoughts. Emma winced, shifting her position to ease the pressure. "You need to rest," Garrett said, concern replacing the wariness in his expression. "This is a lot to take in." "I'm fine," Emma insisted, though her back had begun to ache. "I need to understand." She turned back to the journal, flipping forward several pages to an entry from early 1926. "I've made my decision," she read. "The farm will be deeded to Eleanor, with provisions that it cannot be permanently sold outside the family. I will bury the documents where only blood will find them, guided by Jasper's descendants. When the time is right, an Evergreen will return. I have seen it in my dreams, a woman with child, following the path home. The land will know its own." Emma closed the journal, her hands trembling slightly. She knew. She knew. Somehow she knew I would come. Garrett was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Your grandmother knew too. That's why she kept coming back, why she made those conditions when I leased the place." "I'm sorry," Emma said, suddenly aware of what this meant for him. "This is your home now. I never intended to disrupt your life." "It's not that simple," Garrett replied, his voice holding a strange mix of resignation and something harder to define. "I've wondered for years why Eliza was so particular about certain things. Why she insisted I maintain the original structure of the house. Why she checked the north barn every visit." He gestured to the box. "Now we know." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Emma felt the weight of a century's worth of plans converging on this moment, on her shoulders. Her grandmother had sent her here, knowing what awaited. But why now? Why, after keeping the secret all these years, had Eliza Winters finally decided it was time for Emma to discover her legacy? "There's something we're still missing," Emma said, returning to the strongbox. She carefully removed the journal and deed, revealing a final item at the bottom. A smaller envelope, yellowed with age but sealed with modern tape. Written across it in handwriting, Emma recognized as her grandmother's were the words, "For Emma, when Jasper shows the way." Her hands shook as she opened this final message. Inside was a letter, written on modern stationery, dated just a month before Eliza's death. "My dearest Emma," she read aloud, her voice catching. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have followed my instructions to Evergreen Valley Farm. The time has come for you to know the truth that I have carried all these years." Emma paused, taking a steadying breath before continuing. "Grace Evergreen was my mother, your great-grandmother. She was a remarkable woman who ran the farm alone after my father's death before I was born. What few knew was that my father was not her husband, but a man of considerable power in the county who had pursued her relentlessly. When she refused his advances, he threatened to take the farm by force. Rather than submit, she fought back, using the only weapon she had, legal documents and foresight." The twins shifted restlessly as Emma read, as if they too were absorbing this family history. "The man who fathered me never knew of my existence. Grace sent me away as an infant, to be raised by her cousin in Chicago, protecting me from a man who would have used me to claim Evergreen Valley. The farm was my birthright, but Grace knew I would only be safe if I remained ignorant of my heritage until the threat had passed." Emma looked up at Garrett, who was listening intently, his expression somber. By the time I learned the truth, I had built a life elsewhere. Yet I could never fully abandon my mother's legacy. I visited when I could, watching over the land from a distance. When my own daughter showed no interest in her heritage, I waited, knowing that someday the right descendant would come. I have seen her in my dreams. You, Emma, with 2 lives growing inside you, seeking sanctuary at the moment you need it most. Emma's free hand went to her belly, feeling the twins' movements beneath her palm. How had her grandmother known? The letter continued, answering the unspoken question. Some gifts run in our family, Emma. The knowing, as Grace called it. I felt your children stir in my dreams long before you told me you were expecting. I saw the man who would leave you, and I saw the farm waiting to welcome you home. The timing of all things has purpose. When you read this, you will have met Garrett Reed. He has been a faithful steward of our land, though he did not know its true purpose. The farm has chosen him as surely as it has called you home. What happens next is for you to decide. But know this, Evergreen Valley has always been a place of healing for our family. Let it work its magic, daughter of my heart. The letter ended with a simple closing. All my love, Grandma Eliza. Emma carefully folded the letter, her mind struggling to process everything she had learned. The farm was hers, had always been meant for her. Her grandmother had known about the twins, about Thomas leaving, had somehow foreseen it all and prepared this path for her. And Garrett. The letter had mentioned him specifically. The farm had chosen him, whatever that meant. She looked up to find him watching her, his expression a careful mask that didn't quite hide the conflict in his eyes. It's your farm, he said simply. Always has been, apparently. I don't know what to say, Emma admitted. I came here following a cryptic message, expecting... She shook her head. I don't know what I was expecting, but not this. Not a century-old legacy, and a deed to property I didn't know existed. Garrett moved to the workshop window, looking out over the fields he had tended for 6 years. It's good land, he said after a moment. Productive. I've worked hard to restore what had fallen into disrepair before I came. New irrigation system in the east field. Rebuilt the small barn. Modernized the farmhouse without changing its character. He turned back to her. I'd be lying if I said I'm happy about this development, but I respect family legacy. Emma felt a pang of guilt. This man had poured his heart and soul into land that, according to documents nearly a century old, belonged to her family. I don't want to take your home, she said. That's not why I came. Why did you come? Garrett asked, his voice gentle despite the directness of the question. Because I had nowhere else to go, Emma admitted. The truth, simple and stark. Thomas left when I was 4 months along. Said he never signed up for twins, for the complications. My job let me go when the economy took a downturn. I was facing eviction when my grandmother's letter arrived. It seemed like a lifeline. Understanding dawned in Garrett's eyes. Eliza knew you'd need a safe harbor. Apparently she knew a lot of things, Emma said, gesturing to the contents of the box. Things she never shared while she was alive. The twins kicked again, a powerful movement that made Emma wince and press a hand to her side. Garrett noticed immediately. You need to rest, he said, the authority in his tone brooking no argument. It's a lot to process, and you're carrying 2 extra people who need you at your best. Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. The emotional weight of the discoveries, combined with her advanced pregnancy, was taking its toll. Just for a little while, she agreed. As they prepared to leave the workshop, a movement outside the window caught their attention. Jasper the pig stood watching them, his intelligent eyes seemingly aware of what had transpired. Looks like his job is done, Garrett observed. At least for now. I'm not so sure, Emma replied, something in the animal's steady gaze suggesting otherwise. I think he's still guarding something. Back in the farmhouse, Emma settled on the couch while Garrett disappeared into the kitchen. She heard the sounds of cupboards opening, water running, the homey noises of someone preparing food. It struck her as strange how quickly this place had begun to feel familiar, as if some part of her recognized it on a level deeper than conscious thought. The twins had quieted somewhat, their movements more gentle now, as if they too were processing all that had happened. Emma placed her hands on her belly, feeling the subtle shifts beneath her skin. "We have a farm," she whispered to them, the reality of it still sinking in. "Your great-great-grandmother left it for us. She saw you coming, somehow. Just like Grandma Eliza did." Garrett returned, carrying 2 mugs of something that smelled like herbal tea. "Chamomile," he said, offering one to Emma. "My mother used to make it. Said it was good, for settling both nerves and stomach." Emma accepted the mug gratefully, the warmth seeping into her hands. "Thank you. For this, and for—" she gestured vaguely, encompassing everything that had happened since her arrival. "For not thinking I'm crazy, following a letter about a digging pig." A ghost of a smile touched Garrett's lips. "Living alone on a farm teaches you to keep an open mind. Besides, Jasper's always been unusual. First time I saw him, I thought he was a wild boar that had wandered onto the property. Tried to chase him off. He just looked at me like I was the one who didn't belong." "And now we know why," Emma said softly. He was waiting for an evergreen to return. Garrett settled into a chair across from her, his own mug cradled in hands roughened by farm work. "So what happens now?" he asked, the question hanging between them. Emma sighed, setting her tea aside. "I honestly don't know. 24 hours ago, I was just trying to find somewhere to stay until the twins arrive. Now I apparently own a farm with a 100-year family legacy and a prophetic pig." She attempted a smile. "It's a lot to take in." "You don't have to decide anything right away," Garrett said reasonably. "The farm's been here for a century. It'll wait a little longer." "But you've built a life here," Emma countered. "This is your home. I can't just—" She trailed off, uncertain how to continue. Garrett's expression was unreadable. "Maybe there's more to the story we haven't uncovered yet. Your grandmother's letter mentioned that the farm chose me for a reason. Might be worth figuring out what she meant by that." A sharp pain lanced through Emma's lower back, making her wince. She shifted position, trying to find relief. "Bad?" Garrett asked, concern evident. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions," Emma assured him. "Practice contractions. Normal at this stage." Garrett didn't look convinced, but he didn't push the issue. "Either way, you should rest. Doctor in town is good, but she's the only one for 30 miles. Best not to need her services if we can avoid it." Emma nodded, the wisdom in his words undeniable. She was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained by the discoveries of the day. "Just a short nap," she agreed. "I'll be outside if you need anything," Garrett said, rising. "Got some fence work that needs finishing before sunset." As he headed for the door, Emma called after him. "Garrett?" He turned, eyebrows raised in question. "Thank you. For everything." Something softened in his expression. "Get some rest, Emma. We'll figure the rest out later." After he left, Emma settled back against the couch cushions, her mind still whirling with the revelations of the day. The farm was hers, a legacy kept secret for generations, waiting for her to discover it at the moment she needed it most. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. She closed her eyes, one hand resting protectively over the twins. Whatever happened next, she was no longer adrift. She had found solid ground, a place with roots that ran deeper than she could have imagined. For the first time in months, Emma Winters fell asleep with a sense of possibility rather than fear. Outside, as afternoon sun gilded the fields of Evergreen Valley Farm, Jasper the pig watched the farmhouse from his position near the north barn. His job of uncovering the buried box was complete, but there was a vigilance in his posture that suggested his work was far from done. Something still stirred beneath the soil of this land. Not objects this time, but truths that had yet to surface. The pig turned his attention to the western fields, where Garrett Reed worked the fence line, his movements efficient and practiced. Then back to the farmhouse, where Emma Winters slept, carrying the next generation of evergreens within her. Jasper settled himself more comfortably in the afternoon sun, patient as only creatures connected to the land can be. The truth was no longer buried, but it was still unfolding. The golden light of late afternoon was fading when Emma woke, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings. As awareness returned, so did the memories of all she had discovered. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, feeling the reassuring movement of the twins. A sound from the kitchen drew her attention. Emma rose carefully from the couch, her back protesting after hours in the same position. Following the noise, she found Garrett at the stove, stirring something that filled the kitchen with a savory aroma. "You cook," she observed, leaning against the doorframe. Garrett glanced over his shoulder, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Man living alone for 6 years better learn. Nothing fancy, just beef stew. Farm food. It smells amazing. Emma moved farther into the kitchen, drawn by both the scent and a hunger she hadn't realized was so sharp. "Anything I can do to help?" Garrett shook his head. "Nearly done. There's fresh bread on the counter if you want to slice some." They worked in companionable silence, Emma finding a knife and cutting thick slices of homemade bread while Garrett added final seasonings to the stew. It felt strangely domestic, as if they had done this dance many times before, rather than being virtual strangers thrown together by circumstances neither could have predicted. "How are you feeling?" Garrett asked as he ladled stew into bowls. "After everything this morning?" Emma considered the question as they settled at the kitchen table. "Overwhelmed," she admitted. "But also, I don't know. Like pieces are falling into place that I didn't even know were missing." Garrett nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes life takes strange turns." "Like buying a farm that turns out to have been waiting for its rightful owner all along?" Emma suggested, attempting to lighten the undercurrent of tension that had lingered since their discovery. A ghost of a smile touched Garrett's lips. Something like that. They ate in silence for a few moments, the stew rich and hearty. Exactly what Emma's body craved. The twins seemed to agree, moving vigorously after her first few bites. "They approve of farm food," she said, smiling despite herself. Garrett's eyes dropped to her belly, watching the visible movement with barely concealed fascination. "Strong," he observed. "Like their mother." The simple compliment warmed Emma more than the stew. "I don't feel particularly strong most days," she admitted. "Just surviving." "That's what strength is on a farm," Garrett replied, his gaze meeting hers across the table. "Showing up each day, doing what needs doing. Surviving the hard seasons to reach the good ones." There was something in his eyes that spoke of personal experience, of his own hard seasons weathered alone on this land. Emma found herself wondering about the wife he had mentioned, the life he had built and lost before Evergreen Valley. Before she could find the right words to ask, a sharp pain lanced through her lower back, more intense than the earlier twinges. Emma gasped, her hand instinctively going to her side. Garrett was immediately alert. "What is it?" "Nothing," Emma said automatically, then reconsidered as the pain receded. "Just a stronger contraction, probably from sitting too long." Garrett's expression remained concerned. "That's the second one I've seen. How often are they coming?" Emma started to dismiss his worry, then realized he might be right to be concerned. "I haven't been timing them," she admitted, "but more frequently than they should this early." Garrett set his spoon down decisively. "Hospital's 40 minutes away in good weather. Should get you checked out." "It's probably nothing," Emma protested, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "False labor happens all the time with twins." "Better to be sure," Garrett countered, already standing. "My truck's out back. Give me 5 minutes to get it ready." Before Emma could argue further, another contraction gripped her, stronger than the last. She couldn't hide her wince, and Garrett's expression hardened with resolve. "That's 3, he said firmly. "We're going." Emma nodded, sudden fear replacing her earlier confidence. The twins weren't due for another month. It was too soon. Garrett moved with efficient purpose, helping her to her feet, grabbing her coat from the hook by the door. His calm competence steadied her as they made their way outside to where his truck waited, engine already running. The journey to town passed in a blur of mounting contractions and growing anxiety. Garrett drove with focused intensity, his hands steady on the wheel as the truck ate up the miles of rural roads. He didn't offer false reassurances, for which Emma was grateful. Instead, he spoke about practical matters: the hospital's good reputation, the fact that the local doctor specialized in rural obstetrics, how the roads had been recently improved to cut travel time in emergencies. "Almost there," he said as they crested a hill and the lights of a small town appeared in the distance. 10 more minutes." Emma nodded, breathing through another contraction. They were coming regularly now, impossible to ignore. The twins moved restlessly between the waves of tension, as if sensing the journey and her fear. "Talk to me," she said suddenly, needing distraction. "Tell me about the farm. Something good." Garrett glanced at her briefly, understanding in his eyes. "Spring's the best season," he began, his deep voice taking on a gentle cadence. "When the apple trees bloom in the old orchard behind the house. White petals everywhere, like snow that doesn't melt. Bees so thick in the blossoms you can hear them from the kitchen window." Emma closed her eyes, letting his words paint pictures as another contraction built. "Summer brings fireflies in the lower field," Garrett continued. "Thousands of them, like stars, come down to dance. The barn cats have kittens twice a year, always hiding them in the hayloft until they're old enough to explore. August, the blackberries grow wild along the east fence line, sweet enough to make your teeth ache." The contraction peaked and receded, and Emma opened her eyes to find they had entered the town, passing neat houses with warm windows glowing against the early evening darkness. "Fall brings colors that don't seem real," Garrett went on, turning onto a street marked with a hospital sign. "Reds and golds that catch the sunlight. The old maple by the farmhouse turns the brightest crimson you've ever seen." The hospital appeared ahead, a modern 2-story building that seemed out of place in the small rural town. Garrett pulled up to the emergency entrance, his narrative ending as abruptly as it had begun. "And winter?" Emma asked, not ready to let go of the lifeline his words had become. Garrett's eyes met hers, something unguarded in their depths. "Winter brings silence, clean and pure after a snowfall. Makes you believe in new beginnings." Before Emma could respond, another contraction gripped her, stronger than any before. Garrett was out of the truck and around to her side in moments, supporting her as they made their way inside. What followed was a whirlwind of medical efficiency. The rural hospital might have been small, but its staff moved with practiced precision. Emma was quickly assessed, monitors attached to track the twins' heartbeats, and IVs started to provide fluids and medication to slow the contractions. "Preterm labor," the doctor confirmed after examination. Dr. Bennett was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and calm, capable hands. "We need to stop it if we can. 34 weeks is viable, but another few weeks would be better for their lung development." Emma nodded, fear a tight knot in her chest. Through it all, Garrett remained a steady presence, stepping outside only during the examination before returning to stand near the head of her bed. "The medication seems to be working," Dr. Bennett noted an hour later, checking the monitor that showed decreasing frequency of contractions. "We'll keep you overnight for observation, but I think we've caught it in time." Relief washed over Emma. "Thank you." The doctor smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Thank your husband for getting you here so quickly. With twins especially, timing is everything." Before either Emma or Garrett could correct the assumption, Dr. Bennett was called to another emergency. In the sudden quiet of the hospital room, Emma became acutely aware of Garrett standing beside her bed, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to stay," she said softly. "You've already done more than enough." Garrett's response was to pull a chair closer to her bed and sit down. "Got nowhere else I need to be?" The simple statement, delivered without fanfare, brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Garrett nodded once, settling more comfortably in the chair. "Rest," he advised. Doctor said that's the best thing for all three of you right now. Emma closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. The medication made her drowsy, and the steady beep of monitors tracking the twins' heartbeats created a soothing rhythm. Despite the unfamiliar surroundings and the lingering fear, she felt safer than she had in months. Just before sleep claimed her, she felt a gentle pressure on her hand. Garrett's calloused palm covering hers, warm and steady. She didn't open her eyes, but her fingers curled slightly, accepting the connection. Morning brought pale sunshine through hospital blinds and the welcome news that the contractions had stopped completely. Dr. Bennett appeared, reviewing charts with satisfied nods. The medication did its job, she confirmed. Twins are stable, both with strong heartbeats. I'd like to do an ultrasound to check their positions. Then we can talk about a care plan going forward. Emma nodded, relief making her lightheaded. When can I go home? The question slipped out naturally, surprising her. When had the farm become home in her mind? If everything looks good on the ultrasound, you can leave this afternoon, Dr. Bennett replied. But you'll need modified bed rest for at least a week. No lifting, minimal standing, plenty of fluids. She glanced at Garrett, who had stepped out for coffee but returned in time to hear the instructions. She'll need help with daily activities. She'll have it, Garrett said simply. Dr. Bennett nodded, satisfied. I'll send the ultrasound technician in shortly. When she left, Emma turned to Garrett. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. The situation with the farm is complicated enough without adding my medical needs to your responsibilities. Garrett met her gaze directly. Where else would you go? The question hung in the air between them, stark in its simplicity. Emma had no answer. She had burned through her savings, had no family beyond the grandmother she had lost, and few friends close enough to impose upon in such circumstances. Besides, Garrett continued, his voice softening slightly, according to everything we found yesterday, it's your farm. I'm just the caretaker. Before Emma could respond, a technician arrived with the ultrasound equipment. Garrett stepped outside to give her privacy, returning only when called back in. The screen showed two distinct forms, moving with surprising energy. Both head down, the technician noted with approval. Good positioning for vaginal delivery when the time comes. Strong heartbeats. Baby A is slightly smaller, but that's normal with twins. Emma couldn't take her eyes off the screen, the reality of the two lives she carried suddenly sharper than ever before. They weren't just movements beneath her skin anymore, but distinct little people with spines and faces and tiny hands that occasionally moved into view. Do you want to know the sexes? The technician asked. I have a clear view of both. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Baby A is a girl, the technician said, pointing to the smaller of the twins. And baby B is a boy. Fraternal twins, one of each. A boy and a girl. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She had intentionally avoided learning their sexes during previous ultrasounds, part of her afraid to form deeper attachments when her future was so uncertain. Now, knowing them as a son and daughter made them even more real, more precious. She glanced up to find Garrett watching the screen with undisguised wonder. Their eyes met briefly, something passing between them that neither was ready to name. By mid-afternoon, Emma was released with prescriptions, instructions, and an appointment to return in 1 week. The drive back to the farm was quieter than the urgent journey of the night before, both of them processing all that had happened. A girl and a boy, Garrett said as they turned onto the long drive leading to Evergreen Valley. Got names picked out? Emma shook her head. I've been avoiding that decision, she admitted. Seemed like naming them made everything more real, more permanent. And when nothing in my life felt permanent. She trailed off, but Garrett nodded, understanding in his eyes. Farm's been waiting for them, he said after a moment. For all of you. Maybe now's the time to think about names that will take root here. The sentiment, expressed in his straightforward way, struck Emma deeply. Names that would take root. Like the evergreens before them, these children would have a connection to this land, a place to belong. As they approached the farmhouse, Emma noticed something different. Jasper the pig was nowhere to be seen, but a sleek black car was parked in the yard. A familiar car. Thomas, she whispered, recognizing her ex-husband's vehicle instantly. Garrett's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but his voice remained calm. "Friend of yours?" "The twins' father," Emma explained, tension coiling in her stomach. "I haven't seen him since he walked out 5 months ago." Garrett's expression hardened, but he said nothing as he parked beside the unfamiliar car. Before he could come around to help her, the farmhouse door opened, and Thomas Reeves stepped onto the porch. He looked exactly as Emma remembered, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his dark hair styled perfectly, his posture radiating the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. His expression, when he saw her being helped from the truck by Garrett, was a mixture of surprise and something harder to define. "Emma," he called, approaching with measured steps. "I've been trying to reach you for days." His gaze flicked to Garrett, assessing and dismissive in a single glance, before returning to Emma. "Your neighbor said you'd moved out suddenly. I had to track your phone's location." The presumption in his tone made Emma's spine stiffen despite her exhaustion. "Why are you here, Thomas?" He seemed taken aback by her directness. "You're carrying my children," he said, as if this explained everything. "We should talk about arrangements." "Arrangements?" Emma repeated, disbelief coloring her voice. Thomas glanced at Garrett again, his expression cooling. "Perhaps we could speak privately." "Anything you have to say." "You can say in front of Garrett," Emma replied, unconsciously echoing the words she had spoken to Garrett about Thomas just the day before. She hesitated, unsure how to define what Garrett had become to her in such a short time. "A friend," Garrett supplied, his voice neutral but his stance protective beside Emma. Thomas's lips tightened briefly before he regained his composed expression. "Very well. Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking since our disagreement." I was hasty in my reaction to the news about twins. The timing seemed overwhelming with the partnership offer at the firm, but I've had time to reconsider. "Reconsider what exactly?" Emma asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. The medication from the hospital made her feel slightly disconnected, as if she were watching this scene from a distance. "Our situation," Thomas replied, gesturing vaguely toward her belly. "I spoke with my parents. They're prepared to welcome you, all of you, into the family properly. We can be married before the births, give the children my name, provide them with every advantage." The words were so similar to what she had imagined wanting months ago that Emma almost laughed. How many nights had she lain awake, hoping Thomas would come to his senses, would realize what he was throwing away? How many tears had she shed, believing that without him, without the security he represented, she and the twins would struggle forever? Yet now, standing on the soil of Evergreen Valley Farm with Garrett beside her, Thomas's offer seemed hollow, a gilded cage rather than salvation. "What changed?" she asked simply. Thomas shifted, the first sign of discomfort he had shown. "I told you. I've had time to think, to realize what's important." "No," Emma said, shaking her head slowly. "There's something else. The Thomas I knew wouldn't change his mind without a reason that benefited him directly." A flash of annoyance crossed his features before he smoothed it away. "My mother is ill," he admitted. "Cancer. She's asking about grandchildren, and my father has made it clear that a family man presents a more stable image for the firm's partners to consider." There it was. The truth behind his sudden reappearance, his convenient change of heart. Not love for Emma or the children she carried, but external pressures and personal advantages. "I see," Emma said, a strange calm settling over her. "So this isn't about us at all. It's about your mother's wishes and your career prospects." Thomas straightened, defensive now. "I'm offering you and the children security, Emma. A home in Boston, financial stability, my name. Most women in your position would be grateful." "Most women in my position haven't just discovered they own a farm with a 100-year legacy," Emma replied, surprised by the strength in her voice. "Most women haven't learned that their great-grandmother fought to preserve a birthright specifically for them and their children." Confusion replaced the confidence in Thomas's expression. "What are you talking about? What farm?" "This farm," Emma said, gesturing to the land around them. "Evergreen Valley. It belongs to me, has belonged to my family for generations. My children will be born evergreens, not Reeves." Thomas's gaze darted around the property, taking in the weathered farmhouse, the barns, the fields stretching into the distance. His expression shifted from confusion to calculation. "You own this place?" he asked, reassessment evident in his tone. "All of it?" "Every acre," Emma confirmed, reading his thoughts easily. Thomas had always viewed everything through the lens of potential profit. "But it's not for sale, and it's not part of any arrangement you might be considering." Before Thomas could respond, a sharp pain lanced through Emma's lower back. She gasped, reaching for support. Garrett's arm was instantly around her waist, steadying her. "You need to rest," he said, concern evident in his voice. "Doctor's orders." Thomas watched this exchange with narrowed eyes. "Are you all right? Is there something wrong with the babies?" The genuine worry in his voice was the first authentic emotion he had displayed since his arrival. Despite everything, he was still the father of her children. "Preterm labor scare," Emma explained, breathing through the discomfort. "I need to be on modified bed rest for at least a week." Thomas frowned. "All the more reason you should come back to Boston with me. I can arrange for the best medical care. A nurse if necessary." "I have all the care I need right here," Emma replied, leaning slightly into Garrett's solid support. Thomas's gaze shifted between them, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I see. You certainly moved on quickly." The implication stung, but Emma refused to let it show. "What I've done is found a place where I belong, where the twins belong. Their legacy is here, Thomas, not in Boston." Another contraction gripped her, sharper than before. Garrett's arm tightened around her waist. "This conversation is over," he said, his voice brooking no argument. "She needs to rest. Now." For a moment, it seemed Thomas might argue. Then he sighed, reaching into his jacket pocket and withdrawing a business card. "My number," he said, extending it to Emma. "When you've had time to think more clearly about what's best for the children, call me. My offer stands." Emma took the card automatically, too focused on breathing through the pain to respond. Garrett didn't wait for further discussion, guiding her carefully toward the farmhouse. "I'll check into the motel in town," Thomas called after them. "We can talk again tomorrow when you're feeling better." Neither Emma nor Garrett acknowledged his words as they entered the house. Only when the door closed behind them did Emma allow herself to lean more heavily against Garrett's supportive frame. "Upstairs," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You need to lie down properly." "The medication," Emma remembered, "in your truck." "I'll get it after you're settled," Garrett assured her, helping her navigate the stairs one careful step at a time. The bedroom he led her to was clearly the master suite, with a large four-poster bed dominating the space. Emma recognized it from the photographs downstairs. Grace Evergreen's room, unchanged in its essentials for nearly a century. "This is your room," she protested weakly as Garrett turned down the covers. "It's the most comfortable bed in the house," he countered. "And it has the best view of the fields." He helped her sit on the edge of the bed. "Besides, I think it's been waiting for you." The simple statement brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. She sank gratefully onto the pillows, the bed indeed more comfortable than any she had slept in for months. "Thank you," she whispered, as Garrett helped remove her shoes. "For everything. I don't know what I would have done if—" He shook his head, cutting off her words. "Rest," he said simply. "I'll get your medication and some water. Then we'll talk about what happens next." As he turned to leave, Emma caught his hand. "Thomas will be back tomorrow," she said, worry creeping into her voice despite her exhaustion. "He doesn't give up easily when he wants something." Garrett's expression hardened briefly before softening as he looked down at her. "Neither do I," he said quietly. "Rest now. Let tomorrow take care of itself." Emma woke to gentle morning light filtering through lace curtains that had likely hung in this room for generations. For a moment she lay still, orienting herself in Grace Evergreen's bedroom, in the house that somehow belonged to her. The events of the previous day flooded back. The hospital, the twins' stable condition, and Thomas's unexpected appearance. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Garrett entered carrying a tray with toast, scrambled eggs, and a steaming mug of tea. "You're awake," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "How are you feeling?" Emma pushed herself to a sitting position, taking mental inventory. Better. No contractions since last night. Good. Garrett's relief was evident in the slight relaxation of his shoulders. Doctor called. Asked me to remind you to take the medication with breakfast. The simple domesticity of the moment struck Emma. Garrett bringing her breakfast in bed, relaying messages from her doctor, his quiet concern for her well-being. It felt both strange and oddly familiar, as if they had slipped into roles written long before either of them was born. Thomas will be back today, she said, accepting the mug of tea Garrett offered. I know. His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Saw his car at the motel when I went into town for supplies this morning. Emma sighed, cradling the warm mug between her palms. I'm sorry to involve you in all this. First the farm situation, now my complicated ex. Not your fault, Garrett replied simply. He hesitated, then added, Do you want to see him? I can tell him you're not up to visitors if you'd prefer. The offer was tempting. Emma had barely processed everything that had happened in the past 48 hours, discovering her family legacy, the preterm labor scare, and now Thomas's reappearance with his convenient change of heart. Part of her wanted to pull the covers over her head and hide from it all. But the twins shifted inside her, a gentle reminder of the responsibility she couldn't avoid. These children deserved a mother who faced challenges head-on, who made difficult decisions with clarity and purpose. No, she said finally. I need to speak with him. Make things clear. Garrett nodded, accepting her decision without question. I'll be nearby if you need anything. The simple promise meant more than Emma could express. Thank you, she said, meeting his gaze directly. For everything. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Eat your breakfast, he said, nodding toward the tray. Farm food makes you strong. After he left, Emma ate with surprising appetite, the simple meal more satisfying than any restaurant fare she'd had in Boston. The twins seemed to agree, moving vigorously after she finished. You two definitely have farm instincts, she murmured, placing her hand where a tiny foot or elbow pressed outward. Already know where you belong. The thought sent a wave of certainty through her. This was where she belonged, too. Not in Boston as Thomas's convenient wife, but here at Evergreen Valley, continuing a legacy that had been preserved specifically for her. By mid-morning, Emma had showered and dressed in comfortable clothes, settling in the downstairs sitting room as Garrett had insisted she remain on modified bed rest. She was leafing through Grace's journal, absorbing more details of her great-grandmother's life, when the sound of tires on gravel announced a visitor. Through the window, she saw Thomas's black car pull up beside Garrett's truck. Unlike yesterday, today Thomas had dressed more casually, still expensive clothing, but khakis and a button-down rather than a full suit. An attempt to fit in, Emma realized, or at least to appear less out of place on a farm. Garrett appeared from the direction of the barn, intercepting Thomas before he reached the house. Emma couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language spoke volumes. Thomas stiff and formal, Garrett steady and immovable. After a brief exchange, both men approached the house. Emma straightened, one hand instinctively going to her belly as the twins shifted restlessly. It's all right, she whispered to them. We're going to sort this out. The front door opened, and Thomas entered first, followed by Garrett, whose expression revealed nothing but whose eyes immediately sought Emma's, checking that she was comfortable. Emma, Thomas said, his tone carefully modulated to convey concern. You're looking better today. How are you feeling? Well enough, she replied, gesturing to a chair across from her. Please, sit. Thomas did so while Garrett remained standing near the doorway, a silent sentinel. Thomas glanced at him with barely concealed annoyance. I was hoping we might speak privately, he said, turning back to Emma. Garrett stays, Emma replied firmly. This is his home too. A flicker of confusion crossed Thomas's face. I thought you said the farm was yours. It's complicated, Emma said, unwilling to explain the full story. What matters is that I trust Garrett, and I want him here for this conversation. Thomas studied her for a moment, then nodded, visibly shifting tactics. Fair enough. Emma, I've been thinking about our situation all night. I understand your attachment to this place if it truly is your family legacy. Perhaps we could incorporate it into our plans. Our plans? Emma repeated, keeping her voice neutral. Yes. Thomas leaned forward, warming to his subject. The property must have considerable value. We could maintain it as a vacation home, perhaps rent out the farmland to generate income. The children could spend summers here, connecting with their heritage, while enjoying the advantages of Boston during the school year. The proposal was smoothly delivered, logical from Thomas's perspective. 6 months ago, Emma might have been tempted by such a compromise. Now, having felt the pull of Evergreen Valley, having discovered the truth buried in its soil, she recognized Thomas's offer for what it was, an attempt to commodify something sacred. The farm isn't a vacation property, Thomas, she said quietly. It's a living legacy, meant to be inhabited and worked by evergreens. My great-grandmother didn't bury those documents to preserve a summer retreat. She protected this land so her descendants would always have a home. Thomas's expression hardened slightly. That's a romantic notion, Emma, but hardly practical. These children will need education, health care, opportunities that a remote farm can't provide. The local school is excellent, Garrett interjected from his position by the door. Hospital's small but well-equipped. And as for opportunities, he shrugged. Depends on what kind you mean. Thomas's gaze flicked to him, dismissive. I'm referring to advantages that come with connections, with the right environment. Harvard prep schools, summer programs at MIT, internships that lead to real careers. Like law? Emma asked, a touch of irony in her voice. The career that keeps you working 80-hour weeks, that made you panic at the thought of twins because they'd require too much of your precious time. A flush crept up Thomas's neck. That was a mistake, he said stiffly. I've already acknowledged that I reacted poorly to the news. You abandoned us, Emma corrected gently. Let's be honest about what happened. When I told you it was twins, you said, and I quote, "One child might have been manageable for my career trajectory, but 2 would ruin everything." Then you packed your things and left that same night. Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was shocked, overwhelmed. People say things they don't mean in moments of stress. Perhaps, Emma conceded, but they reveal truths about their priorities. Your career came first then. What's really changed now, Thomas? Your mother's illness? Your father's expectations? Those are external pressures, not a genuine change of heart. Does it matter why I've reconsidered? Thomas countered. The result is the same. I'm offering these children my name, financial security, a stable home. It matters to me, Emma said simply, because I need to trust that you won't walk away again when things get difficult. Parenthood is nothing but challenges, one after another. I need to know my children's father will stay, not because it looks good to his law partners, but because he genuinely wants to be their father. The twins shifted inside her, as if emphasizing her words. Emma placed her hand on her belly, drawing strength from their movements. Thomas was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. I don't know if I can be the father you're describing, Emma. I want to try, but I can't promise that kind of devotion. My work will always be important to me. The honesty, unexpected from a man who typically chose calculated words, touched Emma. Thank you for that truth, she said gently. It's more valuable than promises you don't intend to keep. So where does that leave us? Thomas asked, genuine uncertainty in his voice. Emma took a deep breath, knowing her next words would shape not just her future, but that of her children. It leaves us as parents who will co-parent from separate lives. You're welcome to be involved with the twins, Thomas, to visit, to build a relationship with them. But I won't be returning to Boston, and I won't be marrying you. Thomas's jaw tightened. You're choosing to raise our children on a farm in the middle of nowhere, instead of giving them every advantage I can provide? I'm choosing to raise them in a place with roots and meaning, Emma corrected. A place where they'll learn values that can't be taught in prep schools. Connection to the land, the satisfaction of honest work, the importance of history and legacy. With him? Thomas nodded toward Garrett, a hint of bitterness in his voice. Emma glanced at Garrett, finding his steady gaze already on her. Something passed between them, unspoken yet profound. With or without anyone else, she said firmly, turning back to Thomas. This is my decision, based on what I believe is best for our children. Thomas stood abruptly, frustration evident in the tense lines of his body. "You're making a mistake, Emma. These romantic notions about farm life and legacy won't put them through college or open doors that my name and connections could." "Maybe not," Emma acknowledged. "But they'll have something more valuable, a sense of belonging, of knowing exactly who they are and where they come from. That's a foundation no amount of money can buy." For a moment, Thomas looked as if he might argue further. Then his shoulders slumped slightly in resignation. "I won't fight you on this," he said finally. "Not in your condition. But I want legal recognition as their father. Visitation rights. Input on major decisions." "Of course," Emma agreed. "They're your children too, Thomas." "I would never deny them a relationship with their father." He nodded stiffly, some of the tension leaving his frame. "I'll have my lawyer draw up an agreement. Something fair to all parties." He glanced around the farmhouse living room, taking in the photographs on the walls, the journal open on the side table. "I still think you're choosing a harder path than necessary. But I suppose that's your right. Sometimes the harder path leads exactly where we're meant to be," Emma said softly. Thomas's expression softened momentarily. "You've changed," he observed. "There's a certainty in you that wasn't there before." "Discovering your legacy will do that," Emma replied. "Knowing you're part of something larger than yourself." Thomas nodded, accepting if not fully understanding. He moved toward the door, pausing beside Garrett. The two men regarded each other for a moment, taking each other's measure. "Take care of them," Thomas said finally, his voice low but clear. "Planning to," Garrett replied simply. With a final nod to Emma, Thomas left. Through the window she watched him walk to his car, his posture gradually resuming its usual confident lines as he put distance between himself and the farmhouse. The black sedan pulled away, dust rising in its wake as it disappeared down the long drive. Silence settled over the room, broken only by the ticking of an old clock on the mantel. Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "You okay?" Garrett asked, moving from his position by the door to sit in the chair Thomas had vacated. Emma nodded, a smile tugging at her lips despite the emotional weight of the conversation. "Better than okay, actually. I feel free, clear." "He'll be back," Garrett observed. "Man, like that doesn't give up easily." "I know," Emma agreed, "but it will be different next time. He's accepted that I'm staying here, that the twins will be raised at Evergreen Valley. The rest we can figure out as we go." Garrett studied her for a moment, something unreadable in his eyes. "So you're staying," he said, a statement rather than a question. "Yes," Emma confirmed. "If that's all right with you. I know the deed says the farm is mine, but you've built a life here, made it your home. I don't want to disrupt that." A complicated emotion crossed Garrett's face. "Been thinking about that," he said slowly, "about what your grandmother wrote in her letter. That the farm chose me for a reason." Emma leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "What do you think she meant by that?" Garrett's gaze shifted to the window, to the fields beyond. "When I leased this place, I was in a dark spot. Laura, my wife, had been gone a year. I was drifting, looking for something to anchor me." His voice was quiet, reflective. "Found this farm almost by accident, listing in a small agricultural journal. Price was too low, condition too good. Should have been suspicious." "But you weren't?" Emma prompted gently when he paused. Garrett shook his head. "Felt right the moment I set foot on the property. Like the land itself was welcoming me." He met her eyes again. "Your grandmother was waiting when I arrived to view the place. Said she'd been expecting me." A chill ran through Emma. "She knew you were coming?" "Said she dreamed of a man with storm blue eyes who would care for Evergreen Valley until its rightful heir returned." Garrett's voice held a note of wonder despite his matter-of-fact tone. "Never mentioned you specifically, but she made those conditions about the pig, about keeping the photographs up, made me promise to tend the land well, to be ready." "Ready for what?" Emma asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "For you," Garrett said simply. "For the next Evergreen to come home." The twins moved vigorously, as if responding to his words. Emma placed her hand over the spot, feeling the strong kicks beneath her palm. "They know," she said softly. "They've known all along." Garrett's gaze dropped to her belly, watching the visible movement with undisguised wonder. "Strong," he observed. "Like their mother. Like their legacy," Emma corrected gently. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming since their discovery in the workshop. "What happens now, Garrett? With us? With the farm? I own it legally, but you've poured 6 years of your life into this land." Garrett was silent for a long moment, considering. "Been thinking about that too," he said finally. "There's an old foreman's cottage on the western property line. Small, but solid. Could fix it up, live there. Continue working the farm if you want. Or I could move on, give you space to make this place your own." The idea of Garrett leaving created an unexpected ache in Emma's chest. In just a few days, his steady presence had become a cornerstone of her new reality. The thought of facing the challenges ahead without him seemed wrong, as if a vital piece of Evergreen Valley would be missing. "I don't want you to leave," she said, the words coming from a place of certainty she hadn't known she possessed. "This is your home too. The farm needs you. And—" She hesitated, then finished honestly. "I need you." Something shifted in Garrett's eyes, a cautious hope he quickly contained. "You hardly know me," he reminded her gently. "I know enough," Emma replied. "I know you took in a pregnant stranger who fainted at your gate. I know you helped uncover a century-old secret without questioning its strangeness. I know you drove me to the hospital and stayed all night, then brought me home and made sure I followed the doctor's orders." The twins kicked again, harder this time, making Emma smile despite the seriousness of the conversation. "And they seem to approve of you, too." A ghost of a smile touched Garrett's lips. "Still kicking for farm food?" "For everything this place represents," Emma said softly. "Stability. Connection. A future with roots." Garrett held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "Could be complicated," he said finally. "You're just getting your bearings, discovering your legacy. And there's Thomas to consider." "Life is complicated," Emma acknowledged. "But some things are surprisingly simple when you find where you belong." She gestured around them, to the farmhouse that had waited for her for generations. "I belong here, at Evergreen Valley. And I think, maybe, you do too." Garrett's expression softened, the careful mask he typically wore slipping to reveal a depth of feeling that took Emma's breath away. "Been feeling that way since the first day," he admitted quietly. "Like the land itself wanted me here. My grandmother saw it," Emma said, "in her dreams. You were meant to be the caretaker until I found my way home." "And now that you're here?" Garrett asked, his voice steady but his eyes revealing vulnerability beneath his strength. Emma considered her answer carefully, aware that her words would set a course for whatever lay ahead. "Now we figure it out together," she said simply, "day by day. There's no rush, no pressure, just two people connected by a piece of land that seems to have plans of its own." Garrett nodded, acceptance and something warmer in his gaze. "I can work with that." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with possibility rather than uncertainty. Outside, afternoon sunlight bathed the fields in golden light, a breeze stirring the first autumn leaves. Through the open window came the distant sound of Jasper rooting near the barn, still guarding the property in his own mysterious way. "I should check the fence line in the north pasture," Garrett said eventually, though he made no immediate move to leave. "Storm damaged some posts." "And I should rest," Emma acknowledged, mindful of the doctor's instructions. "But first, I'd like to see something in Grace's journal. I've been reading bits and pieces, and there's an entry about the orchard I wanted to find again." Garrett retrieved the journal from the side table, handling the leather-bound book with reverence as he passed it to her. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, a simple touch that carried unexpected warmth. Emma leafed through the pages, finding the entry she sought from spring 1926. "Here it is," she said, reading aloud. "Planted 2 new apple trees today in the south corner of the orchard. Heritage varieties, 1 sweet and 1 tart, growing side by side. The old wisdom says trees planted together root toward each other beneath the soil, supporting each other through the seasons. May these trees stand as a testament to endurance, to finding strength and connection. She looked up to find Garrett watching her, understanding in his eyes. "Those trees are still there," he said softly. "Biggest in the orchard now. Intertwined at the base, like they've grown into one another over the decades." "I'd like to see them," Emma said, feeling a connection to her great-grandmother more powerful than the words on the page, "when I'm allowed up and about again." "First place I'll take you," Garrett promised. "They bloom spectacularly in spring, white blossoms on one, pale pink on the other. Whole valley smells like heaven for a week." The image brought a smile to Emma's lips. The twins will be here by then, their first spring at Evergreen Valley. "First of many," Garrett said, certainty in his voice. He rose, reluctance evident in his movements. "Should get to that fence work before sunset? You'll be all right for a bit?" Emma nodded, settling more comfortably on the couch. "I'll be fine. The journal's good company." Garrett hesitated at the door, looking back at her. "Thought of any names yet?" he asked. "For the twins?" Emma hadn't. Not specifically, but an idea formed as she considered the question. "Maybe Grace for the girl," she said softly, "after her great-great-grandmother." "For the boy?" She paused, considering. Still thinking. Garrett nodded, approval in his eyes. "Grace is a good name. Strong. With history." He turned to leave, then added, "My grandfather's name was Everett. Always liked that name." With that he was gone, the screen door closing softly behind him. Emma sat in the warm afternoon light, turning the name over in her mind. Grace and Everett. A continuation of the past, a bridge to the future. "What do you think?" she asked the twins, feeling their gentle movements beneath her hands. Grace and Everett? Evergreen? The kicks that followed seemed like approval. Emma smiled, returning to the journal in her lap. As she read more of Grace's entries, absorbing the wisdom and determination of the woman who had created this legacy, she felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Outside, Jasper had wandered to a spot beneath the old apple trees Garrett had mentioned. The pig settled there, watching the farmhouse with knowing eyes. His job guiding Emma to the buried truth was complete, but his vigil continued. There were still evergreens to protect, a legacy to preserve. And in the farmhouse, Emma read the words of her ancestor, while her unborn children shifted within her. The next generation of a family finding its way home after a century of waiting. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Thomas's involvement, the complexities of farm life, the uncertain path she and Garrett were beginning to explore, they would face them on this land that had waited so patiently for its rightful heirs to return. The truth was no longer buried. It was taking root, ready to bloom with the strength of trees that grow toward each other beneath the soil, finding strength and connection through the changing seasons. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.